And here you can see, as the years go on, how violence has gotten more and more realistic. Back in the 70s, you had Space Invaders, which might have been one of your more violent games, where you're basically just a little blob shooting a bunch of other little blobs that are meant to represent spaceships. And then in the 80s and 90s, games like Mortal Kombat got more and more realistic, where you got, the more realistic it got, the more violent it got too. As Sub-Zero is holding up Johnny Cage's head, which is nothing like anything you'd see in the 70s and early 80s. And then in the 90s, they got a little bit more realistic games like, I believe that's Doom, allowed more and more blood and violence and more realism. And then now you can see that it's only a hockey fight, but you can see how realistic games are now, especially compared to even just Mortal Kombat. But in the end, you got to ask, do video games really create a killer? Can someone that plays a lot of video games eventually lose control of reality and become willing to commit an act of extreme violence? For me, it's really hard to believe that video games can warp someone who is relatively sane into a deranged killer. That just doesn't make sense to me. But the theory of cultivation analysis states that specifically the theory was talking about television, but I guess you could speak it could speak to more media than just television. It says that the more violence that people absorb on television, the more it alters how they perceive reality. So a person that watches a lot of television is more inclined to believe that television, or that more crime exists in society. To kind of monitor in an effort to kind of curb the amount of violence on television, the creator George Gerbner created a violence index, which sampled primetime television shows to analyze their violent content in a given week. But this is kind of like the FBI report. There's no way to know what, or wow, their threshold for violence might not be the same for everybody, so it's subjective in that way. But if you want to blame Columbine on video games, you have to understand, or any violent act on video games, you have to understand that first, school shootings didn't start in the late 90s. People were, or just terrible acts in general. In the US, there were two significant violent acts that happened way before video games were ever around. The first one was the Bath school disaster that happened in the 20s. It was a series of bombings by a man who was upset about a tax being levied on his wherever he was living for the Bath school. So he set 3 bombs and ended up killing 45 people, I believe, including himself, and 38 of them were children between the ages of 7 and 14. Another one was a 1969 shooting at the University of Texas, where a man climbed to a clock tower and started using a rifle, started killing people. Both of these are extremely violent acts done by someone that isn't a good mental status, or well-thinking mental status, but they still happened, and there's no way you can blame video games for those. Another problem with blaming video games is the people that commit the shooting, they seem to have mental instability. The Columbine shooters all exhibited anger problems. Both of them had anger problems, and even one was in anger management for a time before the shootings happened. And one of them was depressed and allegedly took antidepressants. I believe that was Claybold. Harris was, after the fact, was deemed a psychotic by the FBI in an investigation following the shooting, and in the Virginia Tech shooting, the shooter Cho was reportedly schizophrenic based on evaluations following the murder, or before the shootings. And the Norway shooter has been accused of being obsessive, even though he was recently deemed mentally fit to have mentally fit for trial. He was very obsessed, and video games might have been part of that obsession, but they were likely not the cause. Also, studies say that no matter what the studies say that the media's effects can be reset and kind of wiped away if parents are doing their job. In a study, there's a study where they took a group of two groups of children, and they put them in a room, in two separate rooms. And in one room, in both rooms they had the same video of a violent cartoon. In one room, they had a bunch of kids, and the kids would in one room, both rooms they had a violent cartoon. In one room, they had a disapproving adult who would actively, throughout the violent cartoon, would say, "That's bad. That's not good. You shouldn't hit people like that." And there's a big difference with just that adult. There's a big difference in how the kids reacted to the violent cartoons. In the one room, the kids seemed impressed by it and enthralled with the violence. And in the room with the disapproving adult, the kids actually joined the adult with saying, "That's not right," or when a violent act would happen, the kids would actually talk to the adult and say, "That wasn't a good thing, was it?" So the study showed that the effects of just, even not the parent, but an adult inserting themselves into the violent medium and just destroying the effects. Studies have also shown that violent video games can actually do the opposite of what people like Jack Thompson imply. Christopher Ferguson said in his article, "Blazing Angels or Resident Evil, can violence be can be a force for good?" He said that video games have three effects that can actually help those that have anger problems and violent tendencies. First, he said that video games have a tendency to relax, which goes back to Jared Block's comment earlier. People that play video games get their stress relieved, and they get an escape from their life which may or may not be good at the time. And video games can also provide catharsis for the people that are committing the violent acts. It allows them an outlet. Let's say if they want to actually punch someone or shoot someone, the video game allows them to do it without harming anybody. At the end of my report, I suggested some further research that needs to be done. There's obviously difficulties with the doing research about violence, because you can't ethically allow the violent things to occur. Like, you can't just show someone something violent and then hand them a gun and let them just do whatever they want. So there's difficulties in what you can ethically do. But I think the best thing you could do is surveys and more monitoring of violent video game users versus people that don't use violent video games, and see how more aggressive they are and how prone they are to committing violent acts like fights and stuff like that. Develop a better set of warning signs, which just take a look at people that have committed violent acts and try to figure out things that persist throughout them. And then finally, focus on improving parenting rather than restricting media and creative freedom, which basically, it doesn't even have to be the parents of the children or adolescents. If you can just find ways to have adults play bigger roles within the life of people that may or may not commit violent acts, it might make a world of difference. Thank you.